Good morning, everyone. Had something amazing happen today. A revelation, something that's a very common story in here that I've never seen this way before. Stay tuned. Leave her alone. Why are you so critical of this woman? She honored me with this beautiful act of kindness. For you will always have the poor whom you can help whenever you want, but you will not always have me. When she poured the fragrant oil over me, she was preparing my body in advance for my burial. She has done all that she could to honor me. I promise you that as this wonderful gospel spreads all over the world, the story of her lavish devotion to me will be mentioned in memory of her. You're familiar with the story. A few verses before that, Jesus was in Bethany at the home of Simon. He was a Jewish man who was healed of leprosy. And as Jesus was reclining at the table, a woman came in with a very expensive bottle of perfume, fragrant oil, and she broke it. She began to pour it over Jesus and anoint him with it. Now, that didn't sit well with some of the disciples. They didn't understand what was happening. This woman had revelation and insight that was resident within her, that was brought to the surface through her intimacy with Jesus. Intimacy causes us to recognize and to see Jesus in a whole different way, in a whole different dimension. Now, the bottle of perfume represented her pouring out everything that was inside of her and then using that to anoint Jesus with the very substance of her being. The oil was her love for him. And what more could she give? She gave all that she had. This was something that was more valuable than substance or even the year's wage that this bottle of perfume cost. If you translate that today, the average person makes anywhere from $35,000 to $50,000 US. That's a very expensive bottle. But for her, everything that went into getting that bottle still couldn't measure her love for Jesus. You see, she refused to hold back her love for him. Now, she was known as someone who was transformed among the disciples. And yes, Jesus had made a way for women to be more powerful in his circle. She still broke the rules of her day. She still refused to let the fear of man dictate the level and intensity of her worship. What those in the room didn't understand was that her worship was lining up with a moment in history, and she saw it. Jesus said she was preparing him for his burial. Now, even in hearing those words, his disciples still didn't quite capture their meaning, but she knew there was a depth there resident within her. This morning we're in a prayer meeting and we're doing just a very special time of communion with the team and with family. And if you've seen the Secret of the Blood video, which I'll link below, my heart was to begin to share on the magnificent reality of everything contained within Jesus' blood. And I did begin to share that, but first this story came to mind. You see, I had the amazing revelation of the blood. But something I was still learning about was the body of Jesus. In the past, I would talk about how Jesus' stripes healed us and how his body was broken, which is very true and very valid. But today, Holy Spirit, kind of snuck this story into the reality of my heart because it was on the heart of God for what was happening today. The alabaster jar was broken so that what was inside could be poured out. The oil, the sweet aroma, the fragrance contained within. That fragrance could have been aged. She could have carried it around with her for more than a year. It had time hidden within the aroma that came from its essence. But in order to access it, the vessel that carried it had to be shattered. And for the first time today, I saw that Jesus was represented by the bottle. What he carried within him, even the very blood that brought life and substance to his body on the earth, he chose to be broken so that that beautiful substance could be poured out. The body broken so the blood can flow. Jesus even said, when they had communion at the Last Supper, as often as you do this, do it in remembrance of me. So the act of communion itself is an opportunity for us to enter into the same spirit and devotion as Mary when she let the inward substance of her being flow out and become worship that covered and anointed the King of Kings. Now, if the vessel was worth a year's wage, how much more is the worth of the body of the Son of God, of the King of Kings? It's immeasurable. It's beyond priceless. Just as Jesus put himself out on the cross, it stretches from infinity east to infinity west. The value. God loved you, me, us so much. He gave the thing that was more valuable than any other thing. He gave his Son. Jesus gave himself. Holy Spirit gifted family to us. You see the curtain in the temple being torn at the precise moment that Jesus gave his life, revealed that the Holy of Holies was contained within Jesus himself. When the veil was torn, not only did it give us access to the Holy of Holies, it gave the Holy of Holies access to us. No longer do we have to do temporary sacrifices just to get in his presence. His presence is abundantly available through the breaking of the alabaster jar of his body and the pouring out of the fragrant perfume of his blood. The separation has been ripped from heaven to earth. That's why Jesus was hung between heaven and earth on a cross. There's no longer a distance. The access, Jesus himself, the ladder of heaven, from which angels ascend and descend, is now resident within us because in pouring himself out and sharing his blood, we had the blood transfusion and we are grafted, adopted, rediscovered, and placed in heavenly family. So Papa, thank you, Holy Spirit, Jesus, for being the great bottle of perfume who poured yourself out so that everyone, everywhere could know their worth and their value to you. Bless you.